Welcome to the 8th episode of the Middle School AD podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Frederickson. And today we sit down with Steve Robertson, the Assistant District Athletic Director for Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools in North Carolina. Steve is a certified master athletic administrator, and in our discussion today, we talk about funding, AD and admin relationships, safety plans, and females in sports. I hope you're able to get better from today's discussion, but before we dive in, here's a word from our sponsors. Before we jump into this episode, I wanted to apologize for the sound quality of my microphone during this episode interview. Working on some settings to get better, and those settings were a little too hot. So again, I apologize and hope you enjoy the episode.
This episode is sponsored by Gipper, the preferred sports graphics platform for ADs. Start creating professional-looking sports graphics today by starting a free trial. Middle School AD podcast listeners get 10% off any plan when you use code MSAD10 at Gipper.com. As an athletic administrator, you understand better than most how much support matters. Support for your coaches, support for your athletes, and support for your department are crucial to providing the best possible experience for every student. Snap Mobile is now your one-stop for all the tools you need to support your department. With our expanded suite of products, you can now raise money, open team stores, schedule and manage your facilities, and communicate with your athletes, parents, and stakeholders with the same level of care you've come to expect from Snap. Visit snapraise.com today to schedule a demo with your local Snap Mobile representative.
Hometown Ticketing makes it fast and easy to buy tickets on your school's website or in the new Hometown Fan app. It's simple. Just search for your school, buy your tickets, and they'll be right there in your account, ready to be scanned when you get to your event. Download the Hometown Fan app today.
This is Game Time. Neptune Game Time creates a high-energy game day atmosphere that your players and fans will love. Every song in our database is 100% lyric safe, which means you can stop screening music for good. Game Time also provides custom messaging to help you promote your upcoming events, concessions, and event-specific announcements. And it gives you the opportunity to sell sponsorships on your station that will generate revenue for your athletic department. Amp up your game day with Game Time.
Welcome to another episode of the Middle School AD podcast. Today we are speaking with Mr. Steve Robertson, who is the Assistant District Athletic Director for Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools in North Carolina. He has been an AD for 6 years and is a certified Master Athletic Administrator. Steve is on the NCADA board, and he is an LTC 608 facilitator and teacher, and is on the NIAAA mentoring committee. So, Steve, thanks for joining us today, and look forward to this discussion.
Thomas, I appreciate being here, and I'm looking forward to it as well.
All right, so we read off a couple of your things that you're involved in, but if you want to tell us a little bit more about your journey in the world of athletic administration.
It's kind of wild, but and we'll keep it short. I started at Rocky River High School, which is a Charlotte Mecklenburg school that's located in Mint Hill. I went into Rocky River, and I was actually helping coach rugby and football. Rugby I had no idea about, but the coach, Derek Brown, at the time said, well, discipline can help me keep the kids in order. So I said, all right. So I started getting into it. And at the time, he was the assistant AD. So that fall, I was with him, and then going into that spring, he had mentioned to the AD, he said, I think Steve would be a better fit. You should ask him to be the assistant AD. And I had never actually thought about athletic director. Actually, my high school athletic director, Coach Gary Ray, who's done a lot in NIAAA, he was the athletic director, but he was the principal. So you knew him as the principal, not Coach Ray. He coached ball and things, but that was the athletic director I had. So fast forward back to where we are now with Rocky River. That spring, I became the assistant AD, and I said, "Well, if I'm going to get into this, let me go ahead and find out more about it." So I joined NIAAA, joined the North Carolina ADA, And my principal at the time, Erica Turner, who's my boss now as well, she has been an athletic director. She was the first female athletic director over Alamance County. Of course, she played and everything else. And so she had kind of sit me down and talked to me a little bit about it. And so when I went to my first conference, which was actually in Asheville, I believe it was, went to that first conference. And then I paid for myself to go to San Antonio, which was my first NIAAA one. And so I said, well, this is something I could get into. I met a lot of other people during that time. And going into that following year, I became the athletic director. And then that's all she wrote. Well, move up a little further. My principal was hired as the director of athletics for Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools. And she said, maybe about a year or something like that to look for trying to come down there. Well, she started in August of last year and walked in my classroom in October of that year and said, hey, I think we need to make a move now. And I said, well, if we can make it happen, let's make it happen. So I started as the assistant director of athletics that year at last October. And then, we got everything situated in November. So November 16th made actually 1 year officially into the role that I'm in now as the assistant director of athletics. So leading 20 high schools, ADs at 20 high schools and 46 middle schools.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we were just talking about that before we hit record. Like I said, I told him I thought our district was big with 20 middle schools and 15 high schools. And, Lord, that's 46 middle schools. That's a lot. So
that's a lot of
yeah, I'm glad there's two of you up in the district office instead of one of you. So that's hopefully that helps some things out. But I think you maybe mentioned it as we're going through, but who's been some of your biggest mentors in this role?
And the mentor in this role, and I have to start with Erica Turner, who is my boss again now. Like I said, the biggest thing was the principal role. She understood the AD role, and I was a CTE teacher, so I had a full load. So I couldn't get the the extra class here or there, the extra planning period. I had to teach a full load because that's different funding, and she explained that in the beginning. But the transparency of being able to be supportive. And one of the first things she did was when I went to my first conference was call the people that she knew, which was Roy Turner, who's the executive director of the NCADA, Bob Hill, and some others. So when I got there, it was like, hey, we've already heard about you. We've been waiting on you. So jumping into having people put you under their wings, but her being the main mentor because I was able to see it from the administrative side and as well as learning athletics. And that helped out a whole lot. And like I said, to this day, that's still who over me right now.
Well, good deal. Yeah, like I said, it's a lot of this is who we know, and that's kind of where we're at. Once we find those people, and if they believe in us, then we can go from there. That's kind of how I got on the board with the SCAAA is just kind of reaching out to people I knew and build, like I said, build up a resume. So eventually they knew the name, but yeah, that's good stuff. So. With 46 middle schools, I know it'd be kind of hard to narrow down maybe the biggest challenge because you probably got a ton of them. But what do you think the biggest challenge is facing middle school ADs today?
Funding, and it's funding. It's just funding, flat out. Funding is the main thing. And even talking with, and it's got to send a shout out to a couple of my middle schools. Brooke, who's down at Kennedy. Brennan, who's over at J.M. Alexander, and Richard at Mountain Island Lake. Those are some of the ones I kind of talk to and lean on heavily. That's been doing it for a while. Ask them a lot of questions because I've never been in the middle school role. But to talk to them, the biggest thing is their funding because it doesn't fund. So the district doesn't fund middle school sports. So the participation fee that high schools pay in some of the middle schools, that money goes to pay for officials, security and all of those type of things, and we get uniforms and things for them. But our middle schools are presently not at the point of being able to charge a fee to enter their games, so they don't charge a fee. So some may have a booster club, some may have a parent that donates a thing, but the funding is probably the biggest thing that I think that they go through because they do so much. And I salute the middle school ADs because it's a whole nother animal. High school, you can, and it's not that it's easier, it's more manageable, but you got to be dedicated in that middle school part. I mean, they go through a lot with less to work with sometimes. So I salute them in the work that they've done, but the funding is probably the biggest part of it.
Yeah. So you said they have basically a pay to play fee.
Yes.
Yeah. So kind of how, kind of what have you seen, the reaction to that and not charging for games? So I guess that, it balances off there. So, so you're not charging to get in for admission, but you're charging to, a pay to play fee. Kind of, how does the parents coming from, never kind of been in the school setting to get to there? Is it an easy transition because they're used to pay to play for clubs, or is it, is there a little backlash there?
You get some, and then, like I said, that covers officials, that covers everything from officials to police and things like that. Getting some of the basic uniforms that get started up. But the thing that we're working on now, which is one of the big things, is being able to at least let them do able to charge, because that can offset it. Now, the money that we provide them from the district at the beginning of the year, it doesn't cover a lot. You gotta decide what needs to be done first. And so again, that puts the middle school ADs in a thing of, I got to get what's most important rather than kind of what I would like to get or something they can add on to it. So they got to take care of the basics first. And I believe that once we can get to the point of being able to let them charge something to help build on it, that's going to help, not all the pressure, but it's going to help in some ways. And that where it's so many different schools from at one end of the spectrum to the other, then it's still going to be some things that still got to be worked on in between that time.
Yeah, I completely understand. So we, here where I'm at, we get a little bit of funding, like you said, from the district at the beginning of the year, but it's not going to cover a season. So, it's how do you mess that around? But we do charge for admission to games. So like I said, that does help a little bit to go back into the pot and to get things. But like I said, a lot of it comes down, you mentioned it, can you get a booster club started at the middle school, or can you do fundraising? And I mean, very, very creative with the way we're doing fundraising. Definitely at the middle school, because like I said, we want to give them the great experience as possible. We don't want them out in a t-shirt and shorts. We still want them wearing the nice uniforms as well. But
that helps save it too, Thomas. That helps save it, because what'll happen is you'll lose a lot of the kids to the regular travel or youth leagues, because they do get all of that. They do have those things. So you're right. It is kind of, that's going to help to be able to get them in the nicest of the nicest, the best that you can get them.
Yeah. Like I said, we've actually kind of gone the sublimated route, so you can make it look any way you want. It's a lot cheaper.
Yes.
So, we did that with the basketball teams here this past year. And, again, they love it. And, we were paying $40 or $50, less per player just because they didn't have a logo on it,
Right.
So, that obviously some people want the logo, but, sometimes it's better to go the sublimated or the second tier, brand, if you want to call it.
That's a lot of times, Thomas. That's a lot of times. I mean, I even in high school, when I was at Rocky River, we did a lot of the sublimated, because it was able to put everybody into something different, so that did work. And it lasted good. It's not like the regular screen that lasts a pretty good time.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I said, I coached varsity girls soccer last year, and we went with sublimated uniforms, and we looked like AC Milan.
Yeah,
with the stripes and all of that, and
right.
we wouldn't have been able to do that going with a logo company. So, they loved it. Parents loved it. So that's all that matters. You kind of mentioned it, and we've kind of talked briefly on this podcast about it, but the AD and the admin relationship, I think that's critical. It's, that they need to make sure they're on the same page and go in the same direction. But kind of, your experiences being in the building, but also being at the district level, what kind of relationship between the AD and the admin do you see they need to have to be successful?
Well, and the prime example of it is where I am now. Like I said, the district AD now was my principal. That was my principal when I was at high school. And I say this to any AD that I talk to is one of the first questions I ask before I ask what type of parent support, what type of anything. What is your relationship like with the principal? If that's not there, it's not going to work, because you have to, that transparency has to be there. They have to be able to trust you. Like, one of the things that I've always said that I like to do, and what I did with Erica was this: I need to know what your vision is for the school. I'll align the athletic vision with your vision. So I'll put that out front, and then I'll align myself with that. And then that building that trust allows you to do what you need to do on the athletic side. But you have to, like, we used to do monthly meetings. I could go in and talk to her about whatever. Again, the biggest thing is my job is to keep things off her plate. And should it get to the plate, you already know. That transparency is hey, this situation came up. This is what I did. That took care of it. That way, the thing is, you never let them get blindsided. You don't never want your administrator to get blindsided. And at the same time, your administrator has to have your back. And that would be a thing of, I would walk the premises, to have your principal, have your administrator walk the premises with you. Let them see what you do. Because a lot of times it's out of sight, out of mind. People think a game just happens or an event just happens, not realizing everything that goes through with it. And you have to have a administrator that respects athletics, not to the point to where athletics is not important until it becomes important, which means when something goes wrong. And one thing she told me as a principal, she said, Steve, there's two things that can get a principal fired. She said, finances and athletics. And I refuse to let either of them do it. And so by having a relationship to the point to where you can talk to your administrator can talk to you. You can let them see what goes on, keep them in the loop of what's happening. And I think that builds on what you're trying to do with the support. Even if you don't have that, Thomas, I mean, it's going to be a long, hard road. It was never a thing if coaches could go around me to go to talk to the, like, it's a protocol. Hey, have you talked to him? What did he say? And it's that way. Like, you have to respect your athletic director as the professional, as the expert in athletics. And it is a big thing because athletics can control the morale of the school.
Oh yeah, for sure. I definitely like what you said about monthly meetings. I've actually done weekly meetings with my principal, and like I said, sometimes it's a 30-minute meeting, other times it's a 5-minute meeting. So, hey, everything's good, we're good to go, we got this coming up, do you have anything? And other times we're laying it out because maybe it's a big rival game or a big game that we know is going to be well attended, or like you said, something happened.
Yeah.
And we got to talk about. But I like you kind of brought it up a little bit. What happens if you have that academic, which again, all principals are academic minded because that's the main purpose of the school. But what if you have that quote unquote 100% academic minded principal that doesn't, like you said, doesn't get athletics, doesn't get what goes into it? Do you have any suggestions, strategies to kind of help build that relationship?
Yes, and the first one is like I said, that's when we find out the vision. When we sit down to meet and you tell me what your vision is, and then I explain to you how athletics is going to align with that vision for the school. That way, not saying that you're going to get someone to turn complete. You have some that won't care at all about it, or like, hey, it is what it is. But you have to bring that there. You need to when you bring in eligibility reports, when you bring in everything that has to be done, like we use Dragonfly currently right now for registration. When you bring all of that, if it's to the point to where that administrator doesn't understand, you bring everything that you got and let them see how serious it is, to the point to where if this is not done correctly, then this falls back on you. Because one thing that I don't care what ADR, at the end of the day, if something goes wrong, they're going to the principal first. That's who's gonna have to take it. So if you haven't built a relationship to where you know what's going on, not that you have to know but if you don't build a relationship to where you understand what happens in athletics, when something does happen and the news is calling, or someone is calling with a report, or that parent reaches out to someone else, that's going to eliminate that because you have that. So your job as the AD is to, hey, we have to sit down, and if it doesn't come with the conversation, let me physically show you of this 200, 300, how many ever athletes you got. This is the importance of why this paperwork has to be done. This is the importance of what I do when I have to set this up. This is why all of our coaches have to be certified. All of the background checks to make sure that that's done. because if not, it's gonna come back to that principal on another side if we don't have that.
Yeah, I definitely like what you said about the data. The past couple of years, I've started where it's basically an athletic report card, and you take down each sport, and divide it up per grade level, the team's GPA, the team's attendance, the team's participation, things like that. And so you have your base year, and then you build it from then on out. Hopefully, you got a 5-year goal. You want, this much participation, and you want the GPAs here, or at the middle school, really don't deal with GPAs, but you just want like the averages to this point. But that's also something too that you've been able to bring into that academic minded principal. And like, look, here is the data. We've got more kids from your school. We've got more kids involved in something at the school. Plus, as you can see over the years, the coaches have bought into the student athlete side of it, and their GPAs and their grades are actually getting better as the years go on. So again, it's one of those. It takes some time to do, but maybe it squashes some of those negative thoughts.
Well, being in that AD role, when you can pull your report on the discipline side, the athletes, because the athletes have something more to look like the discipline. The discipline issues are not with athletes, the attendance, because they know they have to be in school. There's a lot of things that you can show the education-based athletics. And this is why this is important as it begins to go, and we're taking these young men and young women that's going out into, to the real world, that's moving up to the high school, that they have this done. And your support is very much so needed. Basically even saying, hey, if you have time, do a pregame with me, do a walkthrough with me before this game happens, to kind of see what really goes into this. And I think that could start it. Now, if they don't buy into it or care about it at that time, you might be in a tough situation.
Oh yeah, I mean, they definitely, I definitely say, I've always said, I got asked by one principal in an interview, so what is the relationship between the principal and an AD? I said, but the relationship is a partnership. I said, we're side by side. I understand, at the end of the day, you've got the final decision, but we're side by side. If the assistant principals are on your right side, I want to be on your left side. And just making sure that we are in this together. And I guess it was a good response because I got the job, but that one kind of, it was kind of nice to hear in the interview process that principal was already thinking about, okay, what kind of relationship am I going to have with this AD? So it's big. And, I've said before, if the relationship between the principal and the AD is not there, then like you said, one of you's got to go, and a lot of times it's the AD.
Yeah, and because you run the building, you're the face of that building. I always say, I used to tell a lot of the student athletes, on the back halls and stuff, like to me, one of the most important people in this building is the custodians, because if we can miss school, teachers cannot come to school, y'all can be out. They can even not have food one day, and they can just bring you boxes. But let the custodians continue to miss, and you'll see how bad things happen. I said, so in the reverse, as the AD, you run that building. If anybody comes to 90% of the schools that I know of, if not 99%, whether it be for maintenance, whether it be for anything, it's call the AD. Where's this at? Call the AD. Where's that at? Call it. And they used to come to clean the vents out in the cafeteria, and they would page Robinson to come to the front. And I'm like, I don't know what that, but it's just because of that role, and you make it your own. An AD makes the school their own. It's not just a role to fill. You can get that with again, a coaching position where you just need somebody, a body there. But when you become an AD, that's your place. That's your home. That's what you take care of. You can tell when anything has happened different. Just from walking from your car to your office or to the field, if something's out of place. So you become that person. And once that principal, that admin sees, like, hey, you're basically an administrator, you're the athletic administrator. Because so many things happen, and it's so important that you do have that relationship, and it's a benefit to both sides.
Yeah, like I said, if you've listened to the podcast before, you've heard me say that to me, again, the percentages may be off, but to me, 80% of the people come to your school for an athletic event. And outside people, that they would never really come. The other 10 or so percent or 15% is for the fine arts. They're coming to a band concert, they're coming to a choir concert, but they just don't have as many events, as many nights as athletics, just because we've got more teams than just one or two. But like you say, yeah. So a lot of times people know who the AD is. They might not know who the principal per se is, or the assistant principal. They may know the name. They may have seen the picture, but if they're walking through, they might not recognize them. But like I said, they're always going to recognize the AD if the AD's there doing their job correctly. And so yeah, I think that says a lot. And I'm glad you kind of spun it into the next one with the maintenance. But what is the importance about having those safety plans, especially for athletics and with all the different facilities we have?
So what we did going into this year, because the unfortunate events that we've seen happen across the country with shooting at schools and things like that. Now we have, your emergency action plan if someone gets hurt. But what do we have as the active shooter? Where do we go? So we send out a thing to all of our schools to redo their emergency action plans, basically evacuation plan for active shooter. And glad that we did, because there was an incident not at one of our schools, but like a neighboring county, where it was a situation to where you had that. And it's not just for your football stadium. What if you're at tennis? What if you're at baseball? Now you're getting into basketball. So we basically sent it out to the principals and ADs to redo or have an evacuation plan set up for active shooter or any type of situation, not just when someone gets hurt and you got to call someone in. So now even down to middle schools, where do you go if something is happening? Where are you sending people? Which way are you going? Well, how are you? Who's going to do this? The same way you would have it set up if someone got hurt, to this person makes the call, this person makes sure the ambulance come down, this person does this. Those are the same things you need for those. So those safety plans are so important across the board, especially in the world that we live in today. I mean, it is what it is, and it's an unfortunate thing, but we're in a world to where we do need these type of things in place to know what to do and when to do it.
Yeah, and like I said, a lot of people, like I said, including myself, we don't think about those things. We think about, like I said, if there was a fire, we know where to send people. If we had a tornado during a game, we know where to send people. Or if you're outside and there's a lightning strike, we know where to send people and we know what to say. But if we have a worst case scenario, being an active shooter, or even just a big fight breakout, just who goes where, and what is the announcement? What is the I mean that's huge, especially in like today's world. And we were kind of briefly talking about it, but we're in the, for those listening, it's the November 27th, the day after rivalry week in college football, and it always makes me nervous when teams storm the field after a game. Obviously it happens at the college level, but that happens at the middle school and the high school level as well. As after a game, what is your plan? To keep people off the court, to keep people off the field. If there is no plan, something could happen. And the sad thing is, it's not, a lot of times it's not the students that cause the issue; it's a lot of the parents. Right. And so, is that written into your plan about keeping people off the game field? Just that's another safety thing.
And it's huge, because one of the things that I did at Rocky River was I placed officers right at the gate. No parents. Mm-hmm. Even after the game was over, you could not come to the field house. You had to work on the outside of the gate, let the kids come to you. Like there's just so many things. Even with teams leaving a certain way, I want them to go out a certain way, so you're not passing each other. Again, those are the things that, you don't want anything to happen, but it can. But then when it does, then that's when all chaos and all hell breaks loose. And then there's no one there, or nothing set up in place to have at least some people to know what to do or what to be said.
Yeah, and it's always playing that devil's advocate. Obviously you want everything to go great, but when you walk into a facility, it's what can go wrong, and what are the exits, what are the different places to send people and things like that. So, it's definitely good stuff. And like I said, we could go on a while for that.
Oh yeah.
But because like I said, there's so many different situations that could happen. But I think just like you said, just having something in place, not just for the weather, but for people. I mean, if you want to say, I mean, for when people want to start to be people,
Right.
Just and letting emotions get a little too hot. But and kind of going more a little positive side of it. We just celebrated 50 years of Title IX, and you mentioned we want to talk about the current world of females in sports. So, kind of where do you see it? At the middle school level, at the high school level, or even there in your county.
Well, the numbers for females have gotten smaller. They're getting lower. And one of the things that it did, and first I started it when I noticed it in Rocky River, was like a lot of the incidents were happening were females involved. Because most of the I guess arguments or fights or whatever. And the thing was, it was like we could get more of our girls involved. So what I started doing, I had a rock girls night out. So I brought in all of my coaches from every sport. We had a cookout, and we just invited all the girls from our school to come out that were not playing sports. They played different games. They played like tug of war, different things that would normally not be done. And so we just made a night dedicated to our females, and of course our numbers went up. We were able to we filled a volleyball team, JV and varsity, which that typically didn't happen. Basketball. So the numbers were going up in each sport. And even this year on the district level, we started our girls flag football. So we partnered with the Carolina Panthers and started girls flag football last year. So we're going into our second season this spring. We kept it and we'll keep it in the spring. But that changed it got so large times to where we had a couple schools that was able to do two teams. So we had to cut that out going into this year because it was just that much interest to try to get our females back up. And that was one of the big things. And we did that during the Title IX, during the 50th anniversary. We had a big celebration about that. So I think just getting our young females back into or involved with it to where the mindset of the being a part of a team or growing, we have to make sure that we're getting them more involved.
Yeah, that's something I wish we would pick up here in South Carolina is the female flag football. Like I said, I know you said y'all kind of did it, and Georgia's doing it great, right next to us.
Yeah.
But I mean that's something I wish that we could pick up, just to give them, like you said, just give them something else to do, in the fall, and instead of just the 1 day a year with the powder puff, let's turn it into a league.
And listen, the hours are so intense. Like if you and I can see the highlight video, they are so intense. Like those girls are so serious about this thing. It is. You're not going to watch a powder puff at all. They are very serious. They are running plays. I mean, we had some that even kept going after the season that played in summer leagues in some places. They were calling the ass because it's not sanctioned by the state yet. Is it okay for them to work out? So that was getting ready to cost them. But that's how serious it became. And they're even looking forward to coming back again. And out of the 20 schools, we had 19 teams. Out of 20 schools, we had 19. And this year, we're actually getting, I think a couple private schools are going to jump in. So we'll have more than 20 this year.
Yeah, well, like I said, I definitely think that we need to take some notes from y'all and Georgia and see if we can get it, working somewhere in South Carolina. I know we've kind of talked about it in our county since we're big and trying to do an intramural quote unquote league. But I think we were talking about it, and then COVID hit, and we just hadn't brought it back up yet. So, but yeah, I definitely think that's a good way to go, and let them know that all sports are for females. It doesn't there is no male versus female sport. I mean, all sports are for both genders. We got to make it work. And so So I know you've touched on a lot of stuff y'all were doing there, and a lot of great things. I think some people are going to get out of it. But is there anything else that we really hadn't talked about that you're proud of, kind of what y'all have done in your district for middle school sports and the participation?
So for middle school sports, and that's I'm kind of more so over that myself. The biggest thing was like instead of managing, because it was when I came in, it was like they were more managed. But I said, no, we're leading leaders. I feel good about the fact that we have conference presidents over each conference to where they make the decisions. And like I tell them, you're the expert. I don't manage you. I want to lead you. So you come up to be solution driven. Let me know what's happening. And so I think this year, in this short amount of time that I've been in the role, is basically allowing them to make the decisions because they know what works for them. It's no good for me to sit down at the district office and say, "Don't do this. You can't do that. You can," and I don't have an answer for what you should want to do. So I think one of the biggest things this far to me is just allowing them to be the leaders and the experts at what they do. And I think that they have, like I said, my middle school ads have went leaps and bounds to make it happen. They make it happen, and I'm super proud of how they make it happen with not having a lot to make it happen, if that makes sense. So one of the biggest things, like I said, is just the fact of setting up leaders, allowing them to set up and change some things and move things and basically have a voice in how we do middle school athletics. Because that turnover, that's a high turnover. I came in to 11 new ADs of the 46. That was 11 new ADs that you're trying to get, and you're switching over to a new system, a new registration system, and everything else. And some of them are not, we're not into that role. You know how it can be. Some schools just hear the keys, you're the AD. But they've taken it and they appreciated it, and they've taken it to a new level.
Yeah, and that's big here too, especially with us having 20 middle schools. Is the turnover? Sometimes it's over half, and just because, like you said, some people are just like, well, you're coaching basketball here at the middle school. Why don't you be the AD too? So they might not have a passion for it. They might not have a will to be it, but they got stuck in it for a year or two, and as soon as they can get out, they get out. But it's like I said, it's definitely a full-time job. And middle school ADs, have to teach. They may have an AD planning in there depending on their schedule, but majority of their day job is teaching. And so trying to find that balance, like I know you talked about it before, even being at the high school, it's just trying to find that balance between the two.
Well, I've done a session where I taught a session this summer, back to school for athletic ADs, coaches, basically the work-life balance. I taught a class on giving some tips for that, some things to do with that work-life balance. Because again, one of the other things, we said, well, what's one of the biggest things that hurt middle schools, and it's the funding, but that other part is being a full-time teacher. That no breaks, you got to make it happen and then go right into that. And so that's a huge part of it. That is very much so a huge part.
Yeah, because it's just like high schools. You may have some middle schools that have 4 or 5 sports, but you may have some middle schools that are running 10 to 15.
Yeah.
Depending on where they are, the state they're in, or the county they're in, and so it's it's definitely a big undertaking. And like I said, shout out to my principal. My principal would say is I would give you every class off if I could. He said we just can't because of numbers.
Now with the shortage is even worse.
Yeah, I know, and so. But again, like you said, it helps. He used to be a former coach as well, so he gets it. So kind of in closing, our last episode is, speaking of, I know it's kind of hard to only pick one or two. So, a couple of guests have kind of been spinning it on how to pick more. But what do you think the most important personality trait or strength in a middle school AD needs to be successful?
It only needs one word, Thomas. That's resilient. They got to be resilient. And I think that covers so many things. Being resilient, because in middle school, my ADs might be the AD, you're the, like you said, the basketball coach. soccer coach, then got to turn around and work the clock. I mean, and it's just not there. So you got to be resilient, because even when you don't have the support, even when you don't feel like you're supported, middle school ADs, and my hat goes off to them. I have so much respect for them. They have to love it. They have to love it, because, in high school, it's a little different. I was at a school where you can find ways to raise the money. You can make things happen, or, there's different resources that you can, but in middle school, it's different. So you got to be resilient. I mean, and it's daily. It's a daily resilient. I mean, even down to the point when I found out I had a couple of them that didn't get out of school till 4 o'clock. And I said that alone would have made me say, "Oh, no, I don't know if I want to do this." So you're talking about getting off, driving the bus, driving your team to where they needs to be, coaching the team, bringing them back, then making sure the other teams are okay. So that being resilient is one of the main things I think a middle school AD has to have. And if you don't have that, it's going to be a long, hard road for you.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to what you were talking about the relationship between the admin is, like bring to them what you're doing and see if you can get away from having a morning or afternoon duty.
Yeah.
Because that's your time to set up, or that's your time to send emails or to contact people or whatever. Especially if you do run a full load and you don't stop. And I mean, I'll tell you, my planning is I do nothing teaching wise. As soon as I get into planning, it's AD for 45 minutes, is get as much done as I can, and then back in the teach mode.
Right.
And if I got to do teaching stuff, like I said, it's usually on the weekend when I'm just sitting at home. I'm like, I need to catch up for the week, because during the day, there's you sit down and check your email after teaching, and you got that 45 minutes. Now you got 50 emails, and you got to figure out which fires you got to put out, and and bless them the spring when you got to change games every day.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely, I like that word resilience, and that's a good one. I'm glad you talked about that one, and we definitely use that one as we go on.
Oh yeah, and one of the other things that we did for our middle schools this year, we allowed them to play at their high school once the time worked back, because they don't have lights on the field. So once it gets dark, it's a game over. Well, what we did was we pushed it to where we allowed all of our middle schools to play on a high school field. So each middle school got to play one game at a high school to their feeder high school that they go into, and just worked it out. And that was a game changer for parents, for the kids, for the coaches, for everybody. It was just a massive thing. And like I said, there's just a small give back to them for that. But again, like I said, they got to be resilient.
Well, that goes to the experience. I mean, you get those kids that get to play in the bigger gyms or the bigger stadiums and under the lights for the first time ever, and that leads into that experience, and hopefully hooks them, and gets them and prideful in that middle school, and in the future into that high school. Like I said, I think we've talked about it before on here. Just that middle school high school relationship is very key. Just like the AD admin. If those two aren't talking together either, it's it could be some trouble. So yeah, definitely like that. And but as we close, if anybody wants to reach out to you, if you kind of want to give out your contact stuff, and like I said, we'll tag you on some of the social medias as well. But I'm pretty sure there's going to be some people wanting to pick your brain about a couple of these things. So we have some good stuff today.
Sure. I appreciate it. Well, first, I want to say thanks for the opportunity. I've listened to all your shows that you've had to this point. They're really good. They're really valuable. And I'll be, and I'm sharing them in the link with some of our middle school ADs just to check it out, because I'm definitely going to send them this one. But you're doing a hell of a job, man. And I think the focus of being on that middle school, I love it, because they need that attention. They need some pat on the back. It's not a glamorous position anyway, because they only know the AD. When I tell them when they need new uniforms or when they know how to get somewhere, then that's when you find out who the AD is. But that being visible and bringing a light to what they do, I think is an amazing thing.
Well, I appreciate it. Like I said, I've been at both levels. I've been at the middle school and the high school, and I'm one of the weird ones that love the middle school age, and it was one of those, is like you said, I'm big in professional development, and kind of my personal hashtag is just be better today. And so what can I do to get better today, and what can I do to help other people get better? And like you said, there's about 5 or 6 great high school AD podcasts out there. You can learn a lot from. But like I said, it's a different beast when it comes to middle school.
It's totally a different beast. And again, to share my contact on Twitter is AD Steve Robinson. AD Steve Robinson, my full name on Twitter. And then Steve Robinson _ the speaker on Instagram, because I do motivational speaking and the author as well. And then just Steve Robinson on Facebook. But Twitter is probably the most active for the athletic side of it. But AD Steve Robinson is where you can reach me at.
Well, Steve, again, we appreciate it. And there was a bunch of good stuff in this one. And this one actually will be airing on January 6th. So it'll be right after the national conference. So hopefully we get a chance to meet up with you and see everybody at the national conference. And again, this was with Steve Robinson with the Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools. And we see you next time.
This episode was sponsored by Gipper. Use the code MSAD10 for 10% off any Gipper plan at Gipper.com.